Okay, on the previous episode of Dragon Ball Z, there was an article by Dexter2, I don't even know how to say their name. It was about Peter Zhang, and it was basically saying that he was asking everyone for loans. It ended up being that he owed Sword Art money on the car that he sold for Sword Art, but then didn't give them money. The legitimacy of like his grandma's cancer treatment is actually like unknown. And also, TSM was saying that Peter Zhang was acting as like an agent where he was like brokering the deals for the Chinese players, Taiwanese players, and taking a percentage of their contract in exchange for guaranteeing them a starting spot. So basically that's like super omega illegal accusation. If that was true, it would just mean that obviously he was like essentially sabotaging TSM, which is a pretty big thing to call somebody out on. Okay, and now we will read Peter Zhang's side of the story. Team stolen Mercedes. That's good. My story. After I was released from TSM, I was not going to say anything, but the article about me on Dexterdo had a lot of things that were wrong and I want to correct. I'm not a player agent and never took a cut. The part of the article that did not make sense to me is where it said I was acting as a player agent, taking their money when getting them a spot on TSM. Here are some of the things the article said. The claim is that Yi, in his capacity as coach, would work with management to select players for their roster. This makes it sound like I chose players on purpose and messed up scouting for my benefit. I want to explain how the player selection went this offseason. Last year in summer, week 8, management wanted a team to practice more because Chinese and Korean teams practice a lot. Parth and Bjergsen said that not every player can do that, but we're told to get players to play more, so team was practicing night blocks and even after game days. During playoffs, players feel burnt out and started playing badly, ended up losing to Cloud9, and I was told that a big priority for next year was to find players that are mechanically good and that will adjust the new training schedule. Parth gave me a list of players from LDL and LPL that he wanted us to talk to. I helped figure out which players were too expensive for TSM and which did not want to go to NA and remove them from the list. Then we started tryouts with Chinese and Korean players after getting permissions from teams. I would share the stream and VODs of players. If anyone was really good, I got to help translate some comms and send for staff to look at. At the same time, TSM was talking to Bjergsen, EU, and NA players. We had a couple mid and support options who were good. I talked to the players and their family to understand their personality and how they would fit in NA. I sent that information to TSM. I think Kwaido is a very rookie player but has good fingers and we can help him become good. Shenyu is very smart about the game because he trained under FPX and Doinby. If you see their early streams, they are very hardworking and willing to learn English and talk to fans. I talked to Parth and Case. Once we bring Chowie on, he also looked at player VODs with comms, and then they make the decision with Andy if we want to go with Korean players, EU players, or Chinese players. They decided to go Chinese players. I helped them and gave them suggestion, but I never decided anything myself. Then that he would go to the player in question and offer to act as their agent, stating that he could get them on the TSM roster if they allowed him to represent them. I've never done this. If player asks me about agents or help, I can tell them another agent they can get, but I have never been player agent. TSM also told me I wasn't supposed to be part of negotiations this year. TSM used another person on staff who spoke Mandarin to help with negotiations. These are the 4 players TSM has gotten the last 2 years. Sword Art didn't have an agent. Kwaido, I don't know his agent, but I know his agency and we have no business connection. Shenyi, someone from his family was his agent. Yurison, I know his agent, but we don't have any business connection. For negotiating the deal, he would take a cut of the player earnings, often much higher than a standard agent's fee for brokering the deal. This is such a ridiculously specific thing to accuse someone of too, by the way. Like in the article, it's like, not only does he take your percentage, but he's going to take a huge percentage. It's like, whoa, like super dramatic. Like how do they even get to this point? Let's see. I have never taken any amount of players' earnings as agent fee or helping them go to TSM. Yurison needed help sending his agent money for their agreement, so I helped him transfer it because sending money from USA to China sometimes is complicated. Anyone can check that I'm telling the truth by asking any of the players or any player I've ever worked with. I have never asked to be their agent to talk to TSM, and I have never taken a part of their salary. They will all agree with me. Apology. Then I want to take responsibility for my mistakes. My grandmother's in the hospital and my family needed money. I had promised Sword Art last year that I would pay him for the car to keep myself or send him money when I sold it. I was able to sell it, but I hid it from him and sent that money to my family for part of the expenses. I was embarrassed to ask Sword Art for help at first and thought I could just pay him back later. He discovered that I had sold the car and asked me to pay him back now. On top of that, my grandmother's treatment was supposed to take more money. I was desperate and reached out to friends and players for help. I know it was wrong of me and I'm really sorry. The money has been returned to all the players and I apologized to all of them and then talked to Sword Art and his family and are resolving the situation. My feelings. Last thing I want to talk about is my personal feelings about everything that has happened. Actually, let's just skip this part for now and let's just talk about these parts, the earlier parts, because the feelings part is probably the part that matters the least. First things first, Peter Zhang is a dumbass for taking Swordouts money and spending it on whatever it is. You know, we'll never actually really know the truth unless he super goes into detail and gives all of the receipts for basically the fact that he spent the money on his grandmother's surgery, right? Like that part is just completely unproven and can never actually be proven unless he wants to essentially like publicize his expenses on his grandmother's surgery, give everyone peace of mind that like the money was actually being used, regardless of if it was being used to that cause or not. The truth is that Peter Zhang is extremely stupid with money, and he always probably has been. I'm not that surprised. He's just terrible with money. He's absolutely terrible with money, and he shouldn't be asking people for loans. So just by that grounds, I think he's justified in being fired. I think that's totally fair to fire him for that. What I don't think is fair is like all this part, which was part of the Dexterdo, all of the part where it's about like investigating him for like wrongdoing with these players' contracts and like manipulating the roster and like playing both sides, where he's like working for the team, but he's also simultaneously like taking a percentage of the player contract, which is super unethical. I think this part is the part that I think is extremely fucking weird. Like, first off, I don't understand how Dexterdo got this rumor, I guess. I'm imagining that somebody at TSM came to them and tried to leak this without doing their due diligence about whether or not it was actually true. So, I mean, I feel like he already fucked up really bad. And this is something that is grounds for being fired. But then when you like add on that other stuff, it's kind of like you're scapegoating this person who already made like a fucking massive mistake, but then you're scapegoating him for all this other stuff and creating this rumor that is like literally life ruining. If the only thing that Peter Zhang did was he was a complete dumbass with the money that he owed, I think that like that's something you can move past in your life, right? Like, people won't trust you with loaning money. They won't trust you to like maybe sell something for them overseas. They won't trust you with a loan. That's like not life ruining, right? The part where it's life ruining is accusing him of something like this. This is seriously something that it could keep him unemployed for the next 10 years. He could have to fucking go work at McDonald's. This part where he's being an idiot with people's money and asking people for loans, that's not life ruining. So you have to differentiate like the difference between these two accusations. One of them is going to make him lose his job and probably make him look bad. The other one is actually going to get him into like legal trouble. It's going to completely change all of his job opportunities for the rest of his life. If you're going to make this kind of accusation to Peter Zhang, you need to provide evidence. And when I looked into it myself, right, because I'm curious about whether or not this is actually true, it turns out, from what I can understand, that it's not true. Because Shanyi will come out and say shit like, actually, wait, where'd it go? Yeah, here it is. Peter never take my yen. Like, the players are siding with Peter Zhang. They know he's an idiot. They know that he fucked up really big time, right? But the players also know that he didn't do this like super manipulative, career ruining shit where he's like fucking over a player and a team at the same time. This is not something that they believe that he did because, and this is even a player who is allegedly one of the people who would be like affected by this. Yeah, I mean, I personally, the way I see it is like, if you're going to accuse him of this other stuff, all of this other stuff, this is huge. Like, I think what they're really trying to do, if I had to guess, is I think TSM is trying to scapegoat Peter Zhang for their terrible last year and a half. In the last year, TSM has lost almost all of their League of Legends goodwill. They went from being one of the top teams, a well-respected team that everyone wants to play for, to a complete shit show. And I think that it was very convenient that this person had already gotten grounds for firing and that they can just blame these failed pickups and this failed split and the failed like last year essentially on Peter Zhang. That's what I think. Dexterdo gets this sort of inside scoop before anyone else does. And I'm just wondering, like, where the fuck are they getting this sort of information? And also, where's the proof? Because this is kind of like a life-ruining article. It's really convenient for them to paint the picture that this guy manipulated and pulled the strings behind the scenes and just like caused our roster to be horrible, as opposed to just taking responsibility that they just picked a terrible roster. It's so easy for them to just go to a fucking news site like Dexterdo and be like, yo, this is what happened, bro. Let's make an article about it. That is such an unfair accusation to make. They didn't release this, Dexterdo did. You cannot make that assumption. You are no worse than everyone assuming Peter did what he did. Not yesterday you came out saying so many different things about Peter, but now you just want to shit on TSM. No, I just want them to have proof. It's true that I actually don't know whether or not TSM released this to Dexterdo, but I do, like, based on everyone that I've talked to, I think that it was so under wraps. Like, who the fuck is talking to this site and, like, leaking this unfounded rumor? Someone has to be the source of the article. Yeah, exactly. Regardless of whether or not TSM actually leaked it to them, the fact is, it doesn't matter who the source is, actually. All that matters is there's no proof of the part where he's acting as a player agent. No, it was definitely not me. What the fuck? Absolutely not. You guys think that I'm, like, that juicy for fucking draw? No. I'm way too lazy to talk to some random-ass writer for Dexterdo. Read the bottom part. Okay, let's read the bottom part. So here's his apology. Or wait, sorry, no. It's my feelings. The last thing I want to talk about is my personal feelings about everything that is happening. I've been stressed out from the beginning of this year because of my family issues, but I was happy when we picked up 2 young players who really wanted to go to NA and coach them. I see a lot of potential in both of them, and I'm sad how this season has gone so far and how the players are being blamed. This year, TSM does not feel the same. Since I've been on TSM, I could always talk to Parts/Brixen about coaching or game problem and figure out for my players on Academy. James would be there to help me with Riot or help players with everything and just as a friend. Lena and Parth would always help me with anything I needed or tell me when I did something wrong and how to fix it. Now it feels like everyone is angry or scared about something and there's no one to help. Everyone just want to blame each other. Spica didn't bench Shenyi and everyone from the community blame him, but no one from TSM help him. I don't know if I should say something on Twitter because maybe I get fired or punished. I don't know if someone at TSM tells Dexterdo about these things, but the player agent thing is not true. It is easy for TSM to check and ask players, but instead I have to defend myself. Maybe it's better for TSM if everything is my fault. I don't know. TSM just doesn't feel the same anymore. I wish the best for the players on the team, especially about Kwaido and Shenyi. As young players, they came to NA and don't speak English and are trying their best in a hard situation. They had to learn the game and speak English and everything very fast. They got little help and then both got benched. I don't think they have shown close to what they're capable of. I think he did a great job summing all this up at the end. Maybe this feelings part is honestly, it's like, you could almost argue that it's like unnecessary, but I think it was a good wrap up to it. He accepts his decision for TSM to fucking fire him over the money stuff. The player salary part, yeah, I think that's good that he came out and defended him, because from what I can understand, and you know, from my like fucking third-party investigation, it is not true, and it's really fucked up if people actually believe that that's true. Just because Peter Zhang fucked up already doesn't mean he's like guilty of like all this other stuff. Like you can be. Yeah, you essentially, like, you can be someone who made a mistake, but, like, people will just like to paint him as, like, oh, this guy's shady. That means, like, all that other stuff must be true. It's like, dude, fucking somebody could go back and tell him that he, like, I don't know, he was a guy who, like, assassinated Abraham Lincoln or something, and you just believe it because, like, oh my god, he's so shady. Of course he would do that. It is a huge accusation, and I've seen zero evidence for it, basically. I've seen zero evidence, and the only evidence that I see is that people who would allegedly be affected by being a player agent are coming out and saying, yeah, that's totally not true. Also, on TSM right now, because they're just like perma-firing everyone, it's so scary for any of these players to come out and like go against the narrative, basically to go against the company, right? Like, if they go out and they say like Peter Zhang is innocent the same way that Shenyi did, like, I'm sure, I'm absolutely positive Shenyi doesn't give a single fuck. Like, he can tweet something like this, he doesn't give a fuck, but like maybe Yersin is a lot more scared for his job. He's not going to go out and kind of dispute this or like get involved at all in this drama. So it's scary. Anyways, the conclusion that I've made is that although Peter Zhang is a total dumbass and I would never loan him money for anything, that's not grounds for having your entire life ruined. The player agent stuff, if people actually believe it and he doesn't clear his name, is such a massive fucking hit on his life and his career. Yeah, I think people should be pretty indignant about those kind of accusations without proof. There's one thing where you're fucking shady with people's money, borrowing it, or owing people money. There's another thing with this other stuff that's just going to completely bar him from ever getting an esports job ever again, which is all he's invested his life into and his entire skill set is into, and he's going to have this reputation hanging over him for the rest of his life unless it's cleared. Yeah, I'm sure every single one of us has fucked up at our job or done something honestly pretty unethical or fucked up. Even if you haven't, hopefully you can sympathize with somebody who's made like a you know, really fucked up mistake, but that's definitely not enough to ruin your life. He obviously has like 30 or 40 more years in his like workable life. That shouldn't be affected by something like this. At least not to the degree that like this article is making it out to be. You'll never know whether or not that part of it is true and whether or not he intended to pay. It's not theft of people's money unless he actually never paid them back. Asking around, people have loaned Peter Zhang a lot of money before, or like small sums, like decent sized, medium sized sums of money before, and they've always been paid back. So, like, it seems like, yeah, you just cannot make that kind of claim. Yo, what's up, guys? All right. My fucking mic is muted. Test. Hello, test.
Yo.
Oh shit, my mic was muted.
All good.
I'm loving the comms here. Arian Dell, man, how are you doing?